What drams did I pour for myself and my friends over the holiday season? I'm Jeff, this is G Whiskey. Stick around. Okay, so the 12 drams of Christmas, 12 drams that I enjoyed over the holiday season. I had some friends over for a celebration about a week before Christmas, and I'm not gonna lie, we pulled out some pretty heavy hitters. Now, it is important to note before we begin that we didn't drink all of these whiskeys in a single sitting because that would be binge drinking, and I don't advocate that. I advocate for healthy drinking. So let's just pretend that these were not all consumed in a single night of debauchery and were healthily and safely spread out over the entire holiday season. Wink. We're going to be talking about 12 bottles today. I'll be ranking them in the order in which I enjoyed them that evening. And I'll be honest, not all of these bottles are my bottles. A lot of them were brought by friends. The gathering wasn't mine, so most of them are mine. But a few of the bottles, I'll be honest, I'm not totally familiar with. I might have just tried them that one evening. So it's not a considered list, it's an in-the-moment list. And listen, everything here is phenomenal. Like I said, we brought out some really heavy hitters. We always do at Christmas. We bring the best of the best. So even number 12 is a banger. All of these whiskeys or alternatives, they're all bangers. As usual, I have a mystery pour in my glass. You'll have to stick around to the end of the list for me to share with you what that is. Your hint for today is that this is an extremely sought after and expensive lowland whiskey that gets released as vintages. I think a lot of you might have already guessed it, but either way, good luck guessing. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into this list. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, I think number 12 might actually piss some people off, not because they don't like it, but because they do like it, and I'm putting it as number 12 on the list. A lot of you will think this deserves to be higher. It's an amazing whiskey. These are all amazing whiskeys. At 12, I've got AnCnoc 24. This is such a beautiful whiskey. It is well aged, it is well sherried. The price isn't too high, or it wasn't that high when I bought it. I bought it 3 years ago, I want to say, and I haven't really seen it on the shelves in the last couple years. I do think it's gotten harder to find, and it's also gotten more expensive. That said, still probably cheaper than most other 24-year-olds out there. 46% non-chill filtered, natural color, absolute banger. Even though it's number 12, we loved it that night. So there we go, AnCnoc 24. Number 11 is actually a Canadian whiskey, which is a bit of a surprise. I have talked about it before on the channel, but not much because it's not one that you can go out and find. It's a 2018 release, and I think even in Canada, it's going to be sold out. It's the Wiser's 23 Cask Strength. We love this stuff. It couldn't match the subtlety or the complexity of the AnCnoc 24, but it seems we were in the mood for some beast mode stuff that night, and this one hit the spot. The bottle I have comes in at 64.3%, so really punchy stuff. Great flavors in this. This one tastes like buttered popcorn, loads of fun. Now, this release, fine, you might not be able to find it, but there are some very well-aged premium Wiser's releases out there, often at Cask Strength, that you can still find that are still on the market. And they can be really interesting whiskeys. So don't turn your nose up at Canadian whiskey or at Wiser's. They make some phenomenal stuff. We really enjoyed this one. Number 11, Wiser's 23 Cask Strength. Number 10 is Blanton's Gold. This one was brought over by a buddy in the United States, my buddy Tim, who is a certified bourbon hunter. He also got me this shirt, making spirits bright, so thank you very much, Tim. Now, this stuff is extremely hard to find, even in the US. I believe allocated is the term. Now, Blanton's is an interesting brand because they get a lot of hate in the bourbon world. It gets criticized for a few reasons. Some people say it sells just because the bottle's cool. Some people say it's an average bourbon for what you're getting. And a lot of people will tell you that it's far too expensive on the secondary market. And honestly, the last part, absolutely true. Most things are too expensive on the secondary market, anything allocated anyway. Do I think it's worth the price, secondary prices? No, I don't pay them. You shouldn't either, but do I think it's a cool bottle? Yes, absolutely. And do I think it's an average bourbon for what you're getting? No, I don't. This is not as loud or as intense as some other bourbons out there, and if you're really into your barrel proof type stuff, this one will probably disappoint. It comes in at a meager 51.5% ABV, which for me is just perfect. What this does give us is some nuance, some complexity, and a good amount of richness. This stuff is full, it's lush, it's interesting, and yes, it does have a traditional bourbon profile. Bourbon for me doesn't offer the same variety as Scotch, and it's a classic bourbon, but it's elevated, if I may be so pretentious. Anyway, we ended up loving it that night, and listen, Blanton's, I've got another Blanton's on the go as well. Blanton's is a good brand, man. I think Yeah, they can be hard to find and certainly don't overpay for them, but if you can get them at MSRP, they're solid options. So this one was good. Number 10, Blanton's Gold. Number 9 is an IB, which might surprise some of you because I almost never talk about IBs on the channel. I get criticized for that, but that is true. And that's because I'm a sellout. I'm going for broad appeal. IBs are limited releases, and I want those sweet, sweet clicks. But I do love IBs. I do buy IBs, not quite as many as I'd like to, but I do enjoy them sometimes, and I do pick them up sometimes. And I honestly don't know why I'm talking about this because I didn't buy this one. It's not a pickup from me. My friend brought it, but yeah, we loved it that night. This one is Longmorn 17-year-old from the Ultimate. This stuff was distilled in 1996. It was bottled in 2014. So this is an oldie that my buddy's been holding on to for some time. It's cask strength at 59%. It's from a single cask sherry butt. And this was just a really fun one to explore. It was really dark and really deep. I'm talking about whiskey, by the way, not butts. Now, if you know me and you follow the channel, then you know that Longmorn is one of my all-time favorite distilleries, one of my favorite brands. And even though this isn't necessarily my go-to style because it's got a very dominant cask influence, this one was just so old school and a little bit funky and really heavy and interesting and complex and blah, blah, blah adjectives. We loved it. Comes in at number 9, Longmorn 17. Okay, so far we've had a couple alternatives here. We've had a Canadian, we've had a bourbon, but with our next one, with number 8, we're leaving the whiskey category altogether and we're moving into the world of Armagnac. What I've got is the Larressingle 1967. This is another bottle that does not belong to me. My buddy and his dad visited that night and it is their bottle. They were kind enough to share it. And listen, if you guys know me, then you know that I love a good brandy. I love a good Armagnac. And you can get some really good, well-aged stuff for a fraction of the price that you'd be paying for the equivalent in whiskey. And honestly, that's such a cool feeling. You feel like a baller walking up to a whiskey gathering with something aged from 1967, which is just a wild age statement. Like, this was one of the oldest things I've ever put in my mouth. And growing up, my priest was no spring chicken. This was rich and full and expressive and complex, even at just 40%. Now, we did do a couple pours of this stuff, and I'll say this, we much preferred the first pour. The second pour got a little bit tan and heavy, but regardless, just a really great brandy and really cool to try this one. So, number 8, Larressingle 1967. Number 7 is Arran 21. This one is an absolute beauty. The bottle I have is from a few years back. This was traded with a buddy. I only recently got my hands on this one, and it's lovely. It's sherried, but it's not too sherried. It still retains that bright and vivacious Arran character. Vivacious? This stuff is fully craft, so 46% non-chill filtered natural color. And I'll be honest, it's what you expect a 21-year-old Arran to be. There's no surprises here, but that's not a bad thing because the execution is there and it's just a wonderful whiskey. It's not over oaked, it's not too casky. Great balance, fantastic stuff. Number 7 is Arran 21. At number 6, we've got Stagg, which used to be called Stagg Jr. This is another really tough to get bourbon in the United States. And if you spend any time on BourbonTube, I think this is one of, if not the most celebrated bourbon out there. And that does make sense to me. This is rich and punchy and intense. It is very much for the barrel proof lovers. It's absolutely packed with flavor in the best way possible, coming in at 63.9%. It's a beast. By the way, I do have a few really nice bourbons on the go at the moment, and I'm kind of curious if you guys want to see those reviewed, because every time I touch on a bourbon, you're either going to get one of two people. You're going to get the stay in your lane crowd where they're like, stick to single malt scotches, it's what you're good at. And then you'll get the other side of it where people are saying, yes, give us more alternatives, more bourbons, more other types of things, branch out a little bit more. So I'm curious where you guys stand on this. If you got any thoughts, let me know down below. Either way, for this guy right here, yeah, it took me a little while to warm up to this bottle, I'll be honest, but now that I'm there, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. My friends loved it the other day, so it comes in at number 6, Stagg. Number 5 is a bottle that I reviewed very recently. In fact, it's the last solo review that I did on the channel. By the way, solo reviews are going to make a comeback. I've been capitalizing on the Christmas season for my own selfish benefit, but I will circle back down to doing individual reviews of individual bottles soon enough. Anyway, number 5, Bruichladdich 18. What's interesting about this whiskey is that in my review, I mentioned that it's got some pretty wonky balance and it's not going to be for everyone. You got a little bit of funk in there, and that holds true, but it's got such beautiful flavors, and I'm just a fan of Bruichladdich in general that I'm sold on this one, and so were my friends the other day. This one is 50%, non-chill filtered, natural color, wonderful intensity, and it's it's a bit of an oddball, but it works. And this one, much like the Stagg, not in terms of flavor, but much like the Stagg, this one took me a while to warm up to. I did like it when I popped it, but I didn't love it, but I did get there eventually. In my review, I scored this one a 90, so I think it's an absolute banger. Sometimes you really got to spend some time with your bottles, really get to know the whiskey. Phenomenal stuff. Number 5, Bruichladdich 18. Number 4 is a little bit obscure. This one is a Bunnahabhain. It's a peated Bunnahabhain. This one is the Moine 12-year-old brandy cask finish. And this is one I've not talked about too much on the channel, but it is, in my opinion, one of the best bottles of whiskey I've ever owned, especially when you factor in value. I bought this for about 100 US a few years back, and that's insane. Sadly, this is a release from way back in 2017, so it is going to be tough to find, and I would assume way less affordable these days. But 55.3%, this one, like I said, is a brandy cask finish. I love brandy casks. I love their influence on whiskey. This added so many layers and so much complexity, and the peat here, everything comes together, everything works. And my sales pitch for this one is that this whiskey is the closest that I've ever come to drinking a steak, which sounds weird, but this is charred and salty and savory and meaty. It's phenomenal whiskey. If it were still around, I'd be ranting and raving about it nonstop. Like I said, one of my favorite bottles. Comes in at number 4, Bunnahabhain Moine 12-year-old brandy cask finish. At number 3, I've got Longmorn 18 Cask Strength, which is a whiskey I need to review at some point. This is incredible stuff. It's a beauty. This one was sent to me by my buddy Laurent in Switzerland. Laurent, thank you very much. I love this whiskey more than my mother. Actually, you know what? That sounded terrible. And it's not true. That was really mean. That was really harsh. I do not love this whiskey more than my mother. My girlfriend, sure, but not my mother. This whiskey, Longmorn 18, it is absolutely incredible. And to be fair, so is my girlfriend. But this doesn't make me do the dishes. By the way, this is the new Longmorn 18, which is now cask strength, and unfortunately double the price of the previous version. This one comes in at, 57.6%. Good intensity here, classic Longmorn flavors, great balance of cask and distillate, just phenomenal stuff. Comes in at number 3, Longmorn 18 cask strength. Okay, if you thought that this list was already fancy, we're about to step it up a notch. We've got the second Bruichladdich on this list, and this one is substantially older. This one is the Black Arts 10.1 29-year-old. This one, unfortunately, is not my bottle. This one belongs to my buddy Lester. He was kind enough to bring it over and share, and damn, this is a whiskey that is rich and complex and characterful, and coming in at just 45.1% ABV, it offers up so many layers of flavor. Now, to be fair, this is not a whiskey I've spent time with. It was a fresh pop that night. I think we only had 2 pours, so it's not something I know well. Noel, Merry Christmas. But our first impression from this stuff was very, very good, enough to put it at the number 2 spot. So there we go. At number 2, Bruichladdich Black Arts 10.1 29-year-old. All right, at number 1, we've got a bottle that was gifted to me by my buddy Arran a couple years back, and I have been very stingy with it. I only pull it out on special occasions, and Christmas felt like the right time for it. Talisker 30. Usually what we do at the end of the night just for fun is we'll do a rundown of everyone's top 3 or top 5 bottles of the evening. And of course, everyone's always going to have their different answers, as they should, but that evening, this bottle was number 1 for all of us. And listen, to be clear, this is not a bottle that I am recommending to you, nor would I ever, because it is just one of those whiskeys that is well past the point of having anything resembling a reasonable price tag. This is luxury. But listen, this is one of those next level whiskeys. Incredible intensity at 49.1%. Great core Talisker flavors, but elevated, sophisticated, all those posh adjectives. So we do get those coastal notes. We get the minerals and the pepper, but It's just, like I said, next level. And yeah, this was just a whiskey that blew us all away that evening. Nothing short of incredible. And listen, number one, Talisker 30. Listen, I do want to apologize to you guys. If you thought you were going to watch this video and walk away with some budget-friendly recommendations, I am sorry to disappoint. We got very posh. However, if you're watching this and you're a multi-billionaire, or if you're like me, which is to say poor and financially irresponsible, yeah, sure, go out and grab any one of these. These are all phenomenal whiskeys, and we had a great Christmas. Okay, that was the list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, I want to hear from you. So what were some whiskeys that you had over the holiday season? They don't need to be fancy and expensive. They can be budget friendly. What matters is that you enjoyed the whiskey and hopefully enjoyed it with some good company. Curious to read what you put down in the comments. And finally, if you stuck around to find out what is in my glass, what the mystery pour is, your hint from earlier is that this is a sought after, expensive, vintage lowland whiskey. What I'm drinking is Daftmill 2008. This is a beautiful whiskey. It's a bottle that I traded with my buddy Arran a few weeks back, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. This is wonderful distillate-driven whiskey. It's very characterful stuff. It's one of those whiskeys that completely disproves the myth that lowland whiskeys are boring and dull and generic. This one is a banger, and it will be thoroughly enjoyed. And I suppose that brings us to the end of the video. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you want to help out with the channel, I have both Patreon and PayPal linked down below. Anything and everything helps. If you're already a supporter, thank you so much. And I guess we'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.